Michael Medved, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, and a pleasure that you admit to going to Northwestern.
It is truly, yes. It's not something I'm proud of. Yes, I concede your point. And of course, you can hear Michael Medved show 10 p.m. Monday to Friday on these very airwaves. I want to start with Charleston and your reaction to the let's not politicize this, and then we immediately politicize it, talking about guns, trying to make Dylan Roof a right winger, talking about the Confederate flag. As you have watched the response over the last 5 days, what strikes you?
Well, what strikes me, of course, is that not something negative, frankly. I mean, the president's immediate response was very, very negative. But I think generally this is a good and healthy sign for South Carolina and for the country, because I have heard absolutely no one who has spoken up for Dylan Roof or said that he should be judged mercifully. The only people who have said that he should be judged mercifully and have forgiven him are the victims.
Right.
And this is a beautiful thing, frankly. And I can't think of another occasion where the whole country has rallied behind a group of very fervently believing Christians and rallied behind them because of their commitment to Christian values. By the way, one of the things that I just found out about is Lindsey Graham, who is running for president, basically suspended his presidential campaign. I just came back from Washington last night. I was in Washington for the Values Voters Faith and Freedom Coalition Road to Majority Conference, where all of the presidential candidates, I mean, all of them except for Donald Trump, spoke to this group. And Lindsey Graham was with us on Wednesday night. And then he left, and he immediately went back down to Charleston. He has spoken to all of the victims' families. He went to the church, but asked for it not to be publicized. In other words, not part of his campaign. Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, I think has handled this beautifully. And look, part of my dedication is to actually look at things that are horrible and see what it really says about the heart of America and the nature of America. And I think that here the news is very, very good about Charleston, which was one of the centers of the slave trade, and of course was the center of the Confederacy. That's where the whole idea of secession began. But now, in terms of coming together in support of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, I think it's very inspiring, actually.
So this was a race-based massacre, and many people are calling now for the Confederate flag that flies on the State House lawn to be taken down because they've tied the Confederate flag to his evil acts, because he had this website where there's pictures of him holding the Confederate flag. His license plate cover was a Confederate flag. What do you think should happen to the Confederate flag in South Carolina?
I think it's time. I mean, I really do. It's one of those things where once upon a time you could make the case that the Confederate flag was basically an expression of pride in the South, but there are enough associations of that flag with extremists like Dylan Roof. And by the way, there's no question at all now. They in Washington Post, they published a great deal of his manifesto. And this is someone who was very much involved with white supremacist, anti-black, anti-American websites. And one of the things, and people should know this, it's not just the Confederate flag. There was on his website material of Dylan Roof burning an American flag.
Right.
And this is someone who had come to hate America. And by the way, the one thing that is incredibly stupid is, of course, the idea that guns made him do it. There is very little indication that he was any kind of a gun nut, and also there was very, very little knowledge. He wasn't being tracked by the Southern Poverty Law Center or the Anti-Defamation League. He was not a well-known some kind of white supremacist. So on what basis would he have been denied a gun? And again, the only problems he appeared to have with the law were pretty recent, were in the last couple of weeks. And I'm not sure if they know exactly when he bought this .45. that he used for his vicious deed. And look, it is not stupid to point out that he reloaded 5 times. That if there had been one individual who had concealed carry at that Bible study, the death toll would have been far, far less.
I want to talk about symbols, historical symbols, because there's a discussion going on about the flag, but then also, and I'm kind of in your camp in terms of the time, but then, where do we go? I mean, in Charleston, you have a statue of John C. Calhoun that towers over the city. You have streets named after Civil War generals. Should all of that history be expunged?
No, of course not. And by the way, at where I went to college, there are 12 residential colleges at Yale, and one of them is Calhoun College, which is named after John C. Calhoun, who was a big apologist for slavery. And by the way, would I, if I were from South Carolina, want John C. Calhoun honored and memorialized? Answer, no. John C. Calhoun was one of the ideologists of secession.
Right.
And look, I believe that, especially having just gone through the 150 years since the Civil War, it's important that people remember it. But part of what's important for people to remember is what a monstrous mistake secession was. And slavery was, and the war was about slavery. It was not about economics. It was not about states' rights. It was at its very core the fact that there were a lot of people, as it turned out about 300,000 of them, who were willing to die fighting for slavery. And does that mean that every single person who fought for the South was a slave owner? No, less than 10% were. But what it does mean is that was the issue. And pretending that it wasn't, and that the Confederate flag can be separated from slavery and from the idea of slavery, is foolish. Look, it's one of those things where the other symbol that Dylann Roof was associated with was the apartheid symbol of the old South African regime, that flag, and of Rhodesia. He was photographed, and by the way, I pointed this out right away because I recognize that flag because I have a lot of friends who are from South Africa. And the fact is, no one would defend flying the old apartheid flag. But what was worse, slavery or apartheid? I mean, come on, they're both evil. They're both racist.
Well, how do you feel in part of his website manifesto, he railed against not only African Americans, but Hispanics and Jews? Do you think he would have targeted a synagogue next?
Who knows? Look, one of the things, Amy, and this is one of those things, my life is very strange. It really is. And
sounds like a title of a book.
Well, my book Right Turns is about some of that. And in my book Right Turns, and in my book What Really Happened to the Class of '65, about my high school class, which, by the way, was also Hillary's high school class. Not same high school, but same time. Though she's much older than I am, because I was ahead of, I was ahead in school. But in any event, the point about this is that in my class was a guy whose name I won't mention, but who was very prominently featured in my book. My debate partner in high school is the proprietor of Dylann Roof's favorite website. It's a Nazi website. It's very popular. I think they get several million discrete hits every week, like 4 million. And he had taken as his middle name. Okay, the website is called Stormfront. And please don't go there because the FBI will be following you.
Oh,
no interest.
Yeah, good. But that is the source of a lot of his ideology, which of course is that black people are subhuman, that the Nazis were right in World War II, that the South was right. And by the way, I don't want to compare the South to the Nazis. I don't think it's comparable. Because, however, can we at least stipulate that what the Confederacy was doing was defending a system that was evil? Lincoln said, and Lincoln, in my opinion, the greatest American, not just the greatest product of Illinois, but the greatest American of all time, if slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong.
Yeah. So stipulated. Michael Medved, You can catch Michael Medved on the Michael Medved Show, 10 p.m., Monday to Friday on these airwaves. Michael, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My great pleasure. And by the way, here's a little tip. I'm going to be talking today about the surprise winner. They had 17 presidential candidates, including Governor Kasich of Ohio, who spoke at this convention that I was speaking at. The surprise winner, by far the best speech, best response, where I think a lot of votes shifted, Carly Fiorina.
We keep hearing that a lot on the campaign trail.
Oh,
Very
she
very
killed it.
interesting.
She gave one of the best political speeches I have ever heard.
Wow.
Reagan-like. It was awesome, and I think her campaign is going to surprise a lot of people.
Very good. We'll look forward to your dissection of her speech this evening.
And Michael, I'm so glad you're back and you're healthy, and we prayed a lot for you. So, congratulations on beating cancer.
Well, thank you, Amy, and it's great to be talking to both of you, and see you soon, I hope.
Very good. Thank you, Michael Medved.
Take care.